The Vorax flagship loomed like a shadow across the void, its hull bristling with weaponry forged through centuries of conquest. Inside, the command deck hummed with restrained power. Captain Drask, his eyes sharp with predatory instinct, watched as the screen displayed the latest prey, human vessels, drifting seemingly unaware in deep space. Pathetic, he sneered, his voice a low growl. They barely qualify as a hunt. His officers chuckled, their confidence born from countless victories. The Vorax were the undisputed apex predators of the galaxy, having crushed countless species under their iron heel. To them, the humans were just another weak race to be exterminated. But something in Drask's gut itched, an instinct he'd learned to trust. He dismissed the feeling with a flick of his tail. After all, no one had ever truly challenged the Vorax. Meanwhile, aboard the human lead vessel, Commander Harris studied the tactical display with cool detachment. Unlike his enemy, he understood what was at stake. Status? He asked quietly, his voice cutting through the tense air. All ships ready, sir. They've taken the bait, replied Lieutenant Carson, a spark of determination in his eyes. Unlike the Vorax, the humans didn't rely on brute strength. They fought with cunning, leveraging every ounce of strategy and innovation they could muster. Harris allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. Good. They think they're the hunters. Let's show them how wrong they are. Back on the Vorax flagship, Drask's unease grew. The human ships were in perfect formation, far too precise for a panicked herd. His instincts screamed a warning, but pride overruled caution. Advance, he barked, leaning forward as if to close the distance by sheer will. The fleet surged ahead, weapons primed to tear through the flimsy human vessels. As the Vorax closed in, the human ships scattered. What appeared to be disarray was, in fact, a carefully orchestrated maneuver. Hidden behind asteroids and debris, stealth drones activated, jamming the Vorax targeting systems. Confusion rippled through the Predator fleet as their instruments flickered and failed. What is this? Drask snarled, slamming a clawed fist onto the console. Panic crept into his voice, a sound unheard among his crew. The humans were supposed to flee, to beg for mercy. Instead, they struck with calculated precision. Missiles and energy beams tore through Vorax hulls, striking weak points as if guided by invisible hands. They've trapped us, one of Drask's lieutenants shouted in disbelief. The fleet was ensnared, encircled by human vessels that moved with eerie coordination. The tables had turned, and for the first time in his long, bloody career, Drask felt fear coil in his chest. Harris watched the chaos unfold from his command center, eyes steely with resolve. Target their command ship. Make it quick, he ordered. There was no arrogance in his tone, no gloating. This was war, and he intended to finish it decisively. Drask's screen filled with static as the first barrage hit. He roared in fury, but it was too late. His fleet was caught in a carefully laid trap, outwitted by prey that refused to cower. As explosions ripped through the ship, Drask finally understood, the humans weren't prey at all. They were predators in their own right, and they just claimed their first apex victim. The Vorax flagship buckled under the assault, and in his final moments, Drask's mind clung to one terrible truth: they had underestimated humanity. As darkness closed in, the last thing he saw was the shattered remains of his fleet, crumbling like dust in the void. Harris exhaled slowly as the wreckage drifted past. Mission accomplished. Let's bring our people home, he said, voice laced with both relief and grim satisfaction. The first battle had been won, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just witnessed the birth of a new kind of hunter, one that feared nothing. As the human fleet reassembled, leaving behind the ruins of their would-be predators, the silence of space was broken only by the hum of engines, echoing with a simple, undeniable truth: the age of apex predators was over. The stench of scorched metal and ionized air hung heavy as the Vorax fleet reeled in the aftermath of the ambush. Fires flickered in the twisted remains of what were once invincible warships, now debris scattered like dying embers in the void. Captain Drask's surviving officers exchanged nervous glances, fear, a foreign sensation to them, slithered into their veins. This wasn't supposed to happen. Prey didn't fight back, and they certainly didn't win. Drask's snarling visage twisted with rage as he surveyed the damage. "Report!" he bellowed, but his command was met with hesitation. "I said report." One officer finally found his voice. "Captain, our targeting systems remain offline. Communications are jammed. We've lost over half our vessels." "Enough!" Drask spat, slamming a clawed fist into his console. How are these creatures dismantling us like this?" His question lingered, heavy with disbelief. The Vorax had always been the apex predators, hunters without equal. Yet here they were, being dissected by a species they had deemed insignificant. Meanwhile, aboard the human command vessel, Commander Harris leaned over the tactical display, watching as his fleet tightened the noose around the beleaguered Vorax. The trap had been flawless, the execution precise. But the battle wasn't over yet. "They're regrouping," noted Lieutenant Carson, eyes fixed on the blinking indicators of enemy ships struggling to reform ranks. "Should we press the advantage?" "Not yet," Harris replied, his tone measured. "We've rattled them, but cornered beasts are the most dangerous. We let them think they can recover, then we strike." In the depths of the Vorax flagship, panic simmered just beneath the surface. The predators, so accustomed to being the ones who instilled fear, now found themselves wrestling with an unfamiliar sensation, doubt. Drask, however, refused to acknowledge it. He was a predator born, and predators never retreat. "Ready all remaining weaponry," Drask ordered, a cold edge creeping into his voice. "We'll use brute force. Overwhelm them with sheer firepower." His officers nodded, clinging to their captain's confidence like a lifeline. But Harris had anticipated this reaction. His fleet shifted into position, forming a wide perimeter designed to counter any desperate assault. "Here it comes," Carson muttered as Vorax ships unleashed a torrent of plasma and railgun fire. The space between the two fleets ignited in a storm of energy, but the human vessels danced around the barrage with practiced precision. Shields flared, but none buckled under the onslaught. "Phase 2 initiate," Harris commanded, his voice cool. On cue, hidden strike groups flanked the Vorax formation, firing targeted bursts that crippled key systems. The Vorax were not merely outgunned, they were outmaneuvered. Their rigid tactics, once their strength, now sealed their fate. On the Vorax bridge, Drask's confidence shattered. He could see it. His fleet was being torn apart piece by piece, their every move predicted and countered. His instincts, once razor-sharp, now dulled by a combination of pride and panic, failed him. The humans were predators of a different kind, strategists who fought with intellect as much as with firepower. "How are they doing this?" one officer whispered, voicing what they all feared. Drask's silence was answer enough. Back aboard Harris's command ship, the final phase unfolded with ruthless efficiency. "Concentrate fire on their flagship," he ordered. The fleet converged, targeting the Vorax command vessel with pinpoint strikes. Drask, realizing the end was near, roared defiantly, but it was in vain. The flagship's hull buckled under the relentless barrage, explosions ripping through its core. In those last moments, as the Vorax flagship disintegrated, Drask's vision dimmed. The image of human ships encircling his broken fleet was burned into his mind, a stark, bitter reminder that the hunters had indeed become the hunted. Harris exhaled as the battle concluded. Victory hung in the air, but there was no celebration. He knew this was only a taste of the challenges to come. "Signal the fleet to regroup and prepare for extraction," he said quietly, eyes hardening with resolve. The Vorax had fallen, but other threats would soon take notice. Humanity's rise had only begun. As the fleet moved to secure the battlefield, a quiet determination settled among the crew. They had defied the galaxy's apex predators and emerged victorious. Now they would have to prove, time and time again, that this was no fluke, that humans weren't just another species, but a force to be reckoned with. The hunt was far from over. The silence of victory was fleeting. Commander Harris stood on the bridge, the faint hum of machinery a backdrop to his thoughts. The destruction of the Vorax flagship was a decisive win, but the tension in the air spoke of unfinished business. He could feel it, a looming threat just beyond the edge of their triumph. Lieutenant Carson approached, his expression grim. "We intercepted a signal, sir. It's not from the Vorax, but it's large." Harris turned, meeting Carson's gaze with narrowed eyes. "Define large." Carson tapped a few controls, bringing up a holographic display. A wave of data scrolled across the screen, indicating something massive moving through the system, a fleet far larger than what they had just faced. "It's a battle group, sir. Unknown configuration. And it's heading straight for us." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Vorax were the apex predators of the galaxy, but this new arrival was something else entirely. Harris's jaw tightened. The galaxy was responding to humanity's unexpected rise, and this time, they weren't sending hunters. They were sending exterminators. "Sound general quarters," Harris ordered, his voice calm but laced with urgency. The ship's lighting shifted to crimson as alarms blared, echoing through every corridor. He could feel the weight of command settling on his shoulders. There was no room for hesitation. "Deploy recon drones?" Harris continued, pacing to the tactical display. "I want eyes on that fleet. And get me a channel open to all ships." Within moments, the fleet was in formation, ready for whatever came next. The human ships had already proven their mettle against the Vorax, but this was different. The unknown was always the most dangerous foe. "Comms are live, sir," Carson reported. Harris took a deep breath before addressing his fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Harris. We've got incoming, something bigger than what we just faced. But we're not backing down. We've shown the galaxy that humanity isn't prey, and we're about to do it again. Prepare for engagement. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and remember, this is our space now." As the signal cut, Harris turned back to the tactical display. The recon drones had done their job, painting a grim picture. The incoming fleet wasn't just large, it was a coalition, a mix of ships from various species, all converging with a single purpose: annihilation. Carson's voice was tight with tension. "It looks like they've formed an alliance, sir. Predators and rivals alike, united against us." Harris's mind raced. He knew this would happen eventually. Humanity's refusal to bow would spark fear among the galaxy's established powers. And fear had a way of forging alliances. "They're scared," Harris murmured. "Good. Sir?" Carson asked, confused by the sudden smile tugging at Harris's lips. "They're scared of us, Carson. And that's why we're going to win." The enemy fleet was almost within range. The sheer number of ships was staggering, an overwhelming force that would have crushed any conventional army. But humanity wasn't conventional. They were the unpredictable factor, the ones who refused to play by the galaxy's rules. Harris's gaze hardened as the tension in the room thickened. "Bring the fleet to attack pattern Omega. We're going to cut through their formation, hit their command ships first, and throw them into chaos. We fight smart, we fight hard, and we fight to win." The bridge crew snapped into action, hands flying across controls. The human fleet adjusted its position, preparing for a daring maneuver that would either result in a crushing victory or total annihilation. As the two fleets neared engagement range, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Harris's heart thumped in his chest, but his mind was clear. This was what it meant to be human, to face impossible odds and refuse to yield. "Enemy fleet is charging weapons!" Carson shouted, tension snapping through his voice. "Hold fire until I give the order," Harris commanded, his tone as cold as the void outside. The moment stretched into eternity, the weight of 1,000 decisions balanced on a knife's edge. Then, with a calmness that belied the stakes, Harris gave the signal. "Engage." The space between the fleets erupted in fire and fury. Ships weaved through the chaos, exchanging deadly volleys as the battle raged. But in the heart of it all, humanity's defiance burned brightest, a flame that refused to be snuffed out. As explosions lit the darkness, the first cracks began to show in the enemy's coordination. Harris's strategy was working. The coalition, built on fear and desperation, began to unravel under the relentless assault. But the fight was far from over. In the eye of the storm, as human and alien vessels clashed, Harris's voice cut through the calms. This is the line we hold. This is where they learn that we don't back down. Not now, not ever. The battle roared on, with no clear victor yet in sight, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The bridge rattled as another explosion shook the hull. Commander Harris gripped the edge of the command console, his knuckles white with tension. Outside, the stars seemed to blur as the two fleets clashed in a violent ballet of destruction. The Coalition's warships swarmed in relentless waves, but humanity's fleet held firm, their lines a bulwark against extinction. Shields at 20%! Carson called out over the din of alarms. His face was slick with sweat, eyes darting between damage reports and tactical readouts. Harris's mind raced. Every decision was a gamble, each second a test of endurance. They were outnumbered, surrounded by enemies who had every advantage, but fear was humanity's deadliest weapon. He could see it in the erratic formations of the enemy's ships, in the hesitation before each strike. They didn't expect resistance this fierce, this stubborn. Redirect auxiliary power to the forward batteries, Harris ordered, his voice steel. We're going to punch a hole through their center. They've reinforced that sector, Carson warned, his voice strained. We might not make it. Then we'll make them pay for every inch, Harris snapped. His gaze swept across the bridge crew, seeing the same fire reflected in their eyes. They had come too far to back down now. The Coalition may have united to crush them, but they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. The ship groaned as it pivoted, aligning itself with the densest cluster of enemy vessels. Through the viewport, the Coalition ships loomed like dark predators, circling their prey. But prey didn't bite back with teeth like this. Fire everything, Harris commanded. The ship's guns roared to life, unleashing a torrent of plasma and missiles. The Coalition fleet staggered under the onslaught, several ships tearing apart in blinding explosions. Yet even as they took damage, the enemy regrouped, tightening their noose around humanity's position. It was a battle of attrition now, a war of endurance where hesitation meant death. They're breaking through the rear flank, shouted one of the tactical officers. Harris clenched his jaw. This was it, the moment where the weight of the galaxy bore down on them. Order the Valkyrie wing to intercept. We hold the line here. Carson's voice trembled. Sir, they're throwing everything at us. If we don't retreat. Retreat where? Harris cut him off sharply. This is the last stand. If we run, they'll hunt us to the edge of the universe. We fight here, and we show them what it means to face humanity. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, one by one, the crew straightened, renewed resolve hardening their expressions. There was no more fear, only determination. The ship shook violently as the Coalition's counterattack intensified. Warnings flashed across every screen, systems failing under the strain. But Harris's mind was clear, his focus unbreakable. He could see the tide turning, feel the shift in the enemy's resolve as they realized the humans weren't giving up, weren't breaking, no matter the odds. The Coalition's battle line began to falter, their ships pulling back under the relentless pressure. Harris seized the opportunity. Now! Push forward! Break their formation! With a coordinated surge, the human fleet advanced, driving a wedge into the heart of the enemy. Explosions rippled through space as Coalition vessels fell apart, their disjointed retreat turning into a full rout. The gamble had paid off, they had turned fear into fury, desperation into victory. But it wasn't over. In the midst of the retreat, a massive warship, the Coalition's flagship, charged straight for Harris's vessel, a final act of defiance. It was a suicide run, a last-ditch attempt to cripple humanity's command. Brace for impact! Carson shouted as the enemy ship closed the distance, its weapons blazing. Harris locked eyes with Carson, a grim smile tugging at his lips. We're not done yet! He tapped a command, triggering a burst of energy from the ship's engines. The human vessel veered sharply, narrowly dodging the collision. At the same time, they unleashed a concentrated barrage that ripped through the Coalition flagship, reducing it to a fiery wreck. As the debris scattered and the light of explosions faded, silence fell across the bridge. The Coalition fleet was in full retreat, their forces shattered. They had come to exterminate humanity, only to learn that the galaxy's most dangerous species was one that refused to bow. Harris exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his shoulders. Around him, the crew slumped in their seats, exhaustion mingled with relief. They had won, against impossible odds, they had held their ground. "Status report," Harris requested, his voice calm once more. "Minimal casualties on our end, sir," Carson replied, a hint of awe in his voice. "We did it." "They're running." Harris nodded, letting the moment sink in. "Good. But this is just the beginning. They'll be back, and when they come, we'll be ready." He turned to the viewport, watching the stars reclaim the void. The message was clear, sent to every corner of the galaxy: humanity would not be hunted. They would be the ones who decided their fate, and anyone who underestimated them would pay the price. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. And as long as humanity stood together, they would show the galaxy that there was no predator more dangerous than those who had learned to rise from the ashes. Whoa, wait a second. Before you disappear into the shadows, hit that subscribe button, or else, the next plot twist might just involve you. Don't tempt fate, it's a mischievous storyteller,